If you're in property management and you're not at the MX Summit, what are you doing? Join us September 16th through 18th in Rapid City, South Dakota. The Maintenance Summit is the only conference laser-focused on property maintenance operations, where the industry's sharpest minds come to level up. Think cutting-edge strategies, priceless insights, all-inclusive meals, killer entertainment, and the can't-miss MX Showdio, a Western experience you'll be talking about all year. Oh, and the Turnover podcast. They're going live from the main stage. Seats are limited. Don't miss the event that sets the standard. mxsummit.co.
Welcome to The Maintenance Mindset, an audio-video podcast brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network. I'm your host, Paul Rhodes. And over the more than 3 decades in the apartment industry, I've had roles that include being on site, providing services as a vendor, creating and delivering multiple education programs, and active association work. This podcast is centered on the often overlooked role that our on-site maintenance workers play. You know, the men and women that respond in the middle of the night to the toilet call, or the after hours, it's really hot in my apartment request, or my favorite, my ring fell down the drain, get over here now. In other words, the often unsung heroes who are responsible for asset preservation and resident satisfaction. Working in multifamily maintenance provides interesting, sometimes amusing, and often fascinating stories and viewpoints. My encouragement to you is this: whatever you do it with a maintenance mindset. Once upon a time, I was a maintenance supervisor of a 124 unit community here in Marietta, Georgia. If you're familiar with it, it was right next to the Big Chicken. And as the maintenance supervisor of this property, one of my primary parts suppliers was a place that I am very sad to see less and less of in business. And that place was the hardware store. Yes, this place was a miraculous wonderland of amazing things that really could be like the land of forgotten toys. I mean, when you walked into this place, they had the old retail shelving with some areas of the shelving that had like 1/8 of an inch of dust on top of it. And the guys that worked behind the counter, they had seen some things. I mean, some of the shop workers were missing fingers, or they had scars. One guy, I'll never forget, if I remember right, his name was James, and he had like the side of his head was caved in a little bit. And his story about how he got that basically ended in him standing in the wrong place while another guy was swinging a sledgehammer on a construction site. So, I mean, these people that worked in the hardware store are not the people that we see working in hardware stores now. If you go in, there's the teenager who needs an afternoon after-school job, or someone who has not done work in the trades. And that's okay. I acknowledge we need that good work experience and set. But this is the old-time flavor of a hardware store. So I guess back to the once upon a time part. I walk into this hardware store because I have to find a solution. I had an issue at the property. If I remember right, I had a irrigation line that I had to change from a 1/2 inch funny pipe to go into 5/8 inch male pipe thread, or something derivative of that. And I had gone through the supplier, the supplier's no longer in business anymore. And on their catalog, you remember in the old times when we had the catalogs that were like thicker than phone books? man, that was awesome. Those were good times. Anyway, the end result is that I couldn't get the transition piece that I needed on order to have it delivered to the property. So I went to the old time hardware store. And I walk into the hardware store and there's James behind the counter, recognized me by name, said, "Hi, how you doing?" I said, "Doing great, little warm out there." He regales me with something about working outside in the heat and taking care of yourself. I let him know about an air conditioner I had just been working on. I mean, it was a great conversation. Finally, I get around to showing him what I need. He stops and thinks for a second and he says, "Hold on." He goes back to one part of the store, gets out a little step stool, stands up on it, reaches way up at the top where he comes out with this barb fitting that ends up going into the funny pipe. Then he goes over and gets a worm gear clamp for another part of the store that's going to perfectly fit around the outside with a rubber grommet on it to make sure that it doesn't damage the funny pipe as it clamps down on the outside of it. Then he goes to a third part of the store where he has to find a transition piece that will go between that barb fitting and the male pipe thread fitting that he has to do. And then finally, we go over to this hidden hatch that up until that point, I had never seen before, that opens up into the floor, that has these stairs that I'm not sure they were built exactly to code, but we go down the stairs into this basement cellar area that I had never even realized up until that point was there, where he goes into the very back of that area, pulls out the exact bin on the first shot, and finds the piece that's going to connect to the part that he pulled, which connects to the barb fitting, which is going to fit on the inside of my pipe. And we come back upstairs and I start to ask him, and I'm like, how do you know where all this stuff is? And he says, "Well, I've just been here and I know that eventually things we kind of decide aren't going to sell, but we can't throw them away because one day we might need them." Okay, that in and of itself is probably another episode of maintenance mindset, but we'll save that for later. And I asked him, though, that fitting that we went downstairs into the back part of the cellar, how did you remember that was there? He says, "Well, I just remember this is an ugly part, and this ugliness really sticks with me." About that time, another gentleman walks in the door because we're back up and James is ringing me up. And this guy walks in, and this guy, honestly, he looked like, if you can picture in your mind, Santa Claus, who has been ridden hard and hung up wet way too many times. I mean, you could tell this was a man just by looking at him. His hands were worn. The calluses were there. This gentleman he had been around. And he and James knew each other, and James introduced me to him. And this guy's name was Mark. And Mr. Mark came up to the desk and didn't go anywhere else. Came up to the desk because James reached underneath the counter and pulled out 2-gallon jugs, paint cans of wood putty. Gallon jugs of wood putty. I mean, in my case, the largest I had ever seen of any wood putty before was like this size, quart size. That's the largest I had ever seen before. But no, James pulled out 2-gallon buckets, looked like paint cans of wood putty. And I got to talking with Mark. I'm like, "What are you doing that you need that much wood putty for?" And Mark looked at me and he said, "Well, now, Paul, a lot of people put pride in their work." And I said, "Yeah, but what work are you doing?" He says, well, I'm doing trim mold in trim work, molding in a neighborhood that's a couple miles down the road there. And I know to come here because James will have what I need. And I said, okay, but 2 gallons of wood putty? I mean, I am not a finish carpenter. I'm not really a good finish carpenter. I can do the job, framing and drywall and that I'm decent at. Mark was an expert at it. And he finished his statement after I got done interrupting him. He says, you know, Paul, a lot of people put pride in their work. I like to put wood putty in mine. Yeah, that's kind of the punchline there, because if Mr. Mark is using that much wood putty, how's it gonna look? Well, we continued talking a little while, and finally I asked the question, could I come see your new house? I mean, it didn't have flooring in it. It was still in the construction phase. And he goes, well, yeah, sure, come on. So after work that night, I arranged to go and meet Mr. Mark at his home. And I went to the site there, and we went and saw 2 houses. One house that had not been painted yet, and another one that he was halfway through installing the molding in. Now, the molding he was doing for these houses was amazing. I mean, it was crown molding. You know, if you've ever installed crown molding, you have to cut that stuff upside down and backwards. There is some amazing mathematical calculations. He showed me a couple of tricks to do it. I'm still not good at it, and I can't say as I enjoy it very much. He showed me the chair rail and the wainscoting they were installing. He even was showing me the trim pieces around the cabinets that he was putting up. Now, around the cabinets, those were works of art, because those were all going to be natural wood and they were pre-stained. So that means none of the wood filler that Mr. Mark was going to use was going to go in those. But I did find out where Mr. Mark put the wood filler. The wood filler was going in this expansive living room area that had these gorgeous recessed ceilings. You know, I believe they're called tray ceilings, to where you've got an outer edge and then you've got some stacked crown molding that goes up into a recessed area. And then there was a third recessed area and on each of these edges, wherever it went into the recess, he was stacking 2 or 3 layers of crown mold. And I got to admit, in the unpainted version of it, I saw where all that wood putty was going. It was all over the place. The only reason you could see it was because it wasn't painted yet. And I asked Mr. Mark, I says, Mr. Mark, aren't you worried about that much wood putty in the molding there? Shouldn't that be better? And he said, son, I'm going to teach you a lesson. Paint covers a multitude of sins. Not only that, if paint is going to cover a multitude of sins, then I'm not going to spend the extra time to make it perfect when I can use wood putty. And once it's painted, you'll never know it was there. I'm that good. And I said, okay, Mr. Mark, sure. Because in the unpainted one, which we saw first, I wasn't exactly a believer. And then we went next door to the one that he had finished and already had a coat of paint on it. It still had one more coat to go. And I asked Mr. Mark, I said, now, Mr. Mark, this right here, what you did it look like the other one? He says, yes, son, it sure did. And I looked at it again and I couldn't see a single area where wood putty was used to fix that problem. I mean, the finished product looked absolutely amazing. And we got to talking about how much time went in to doing all of those tray ceilings. And he said, about half as much as the other crew that's over there. So wait a second, Mr. Mark. It was just Mr. Mark and a helper. And Mr. Mark, as he admitted, was old enough. He wasn't going to be the one that was getting up on the scaffolding that was hanging that trim. He had his helper that would get up there, give him measurements. He was the saw man. He'd cut it to measure. Sometimes he'd cut it a little bit shorter. Other times he'd cut it a little bit longer. He'd hand it to his helper, which would go up on the scaffold and get the nail gun with it. On the ones that was down on the ground, he would do the chair rail and the floor, the base mold, and all of the things that were down low. But the amazing part to me was the amount of craft that he put in to this thing that he knew he was going to make ugly in a way that the paint would end up covering it up. Now, the reason for this story, especially in the context of our third episode of what FK or AI can't do, is just that. You see, I'm seeing an awful lot on LinkedIn, and when I talk with others who spend a lot more time on other of the social media channels, there is a huge quantity of these headshots and these pictures that are all manipulated to within an nth of their life. Meaning, you see a picture of a businessman and there's not a hair out of place. His suit is absolutely perfect. He's standing up in front of on a stage where there is zero issues. There's no tape on the floor. There's nothing on the screen. The lighting is absolutely perfect behind him, looking over the back of the heads of the audience. And there is zero hair out of the place of the audience. I mean, there is not even an audience member that, like me, has an expanding solar panel for wisdom. It's the perfect shot, let alone all of the headshots that we're seeing from people that you look at their face in their little itty bitty icon on private messaging or on the Instabook X, whatever it is, social media, that when you meet them in real life, they don't exactly look the same. Their cheekbones are a little more prominent. Their face is a little bit more sleek. Their body shape outline is much more athletic than those of us who, well, let's just say round is a shape, so I'm in shape. But you see, those pictures, those illustrations that those influencers are perfect. Here's the thing. Humans, we embrace imperfection. Just like Mr. Mark. He's doing an amazing job putting up all of those different levels of stacked trim mold. And he's acknowledging the fact that they're imperfect. They will always be imperfect. And yes, I'm sure if I got up there on a scaffolding, even on the painted one, I would see the imperfections. But you know, Mr. Mark knew when to add more wood filler, when to stop and sand it down a little bit. Mr. Mark embraced imperfection. And you know what? We do too, because we're human. FK only embraces that which it's programmed to embrace. And I'm not even sure embracing is the correct connotation to use. But, you know, last episode we talked about something my dad had said that I continue to take to heart, that a computer does exactly what it's told to do. Human beings, for us, you know, we accept imperfections. One of my favoriteest quotes, I think I've used it on possibly a Maintenance Mindset Minute, comes from Vince Lombardi, where in one of his first speeches that he gave to the shareholders of the Green Bay Packers was to say, gentlemen, we will embark on a quest for perfection, knowing that we will never achieve it, but in that quest, we will find excellence. Well, Vince Lombardi was embracing the imperfection, knowing that perfection couldn't happen, but attempting to get there, that's the most human thing towards excellence that we can provide. Well, in a human world, for us, perfection is very, very hard. Because, you see, in a computer world, in artificial intelligence or fake knowledge, whatever you want to call it, in that world, perfection is whatever the algorithm, the math program, the programming, the coding, the prompting, the whatever it's called, perfection is whatever it's told to do. Meaning, in a computer world, perfection is as easy as getting the prompt correct. In the human world, perfection's impossible. Because for us, variables happen. And that's okay. The imperfect is something to be embraced. I'm not saying that imperfection is a goal to attain. I want to make this repair that I'm doing the worst looking thing in the world. That makes it perfectly imperfect. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that variables happen. And we as human beings in the real world, we accept them. We take a look at pictures that we take on our cell phone before we have any of the filters or any of the things that we do to deal with this camera on the back. When we look at them on the screen, it's already a modern marvel. I mean, heck, I'm old enough to remember when we had the Polaroid camera that we would go throughout the property and we would have to document damages that our residents have caused. You take the Polaroid camera, you take a picture, and it spits out the little film in the front, and then you've got to stand there and you shake it to be sure after 3 to 5 minutes that when it develops, you're showing what it is you want to show. And those things, at that time especially, they weren't cheap. Now we have the ability, when we go walk an apartment, we can take out our cell phone, take a picture, and instantly see what the results are. We even have filters that we can dress it up. We can highlight, we can make it, through the pinch or a zoom. We can zoom in, we can identify. There are programs you can draw little arrows on it to identify on the picture what it is that you want the picture to be. All of that is computerized manipulation. In the end, what we're trying to do is capture the imperfectness. AI can only be as perfect as the prompt needs to be. And that's where we get to this. What AI can't do is understand the concept that imperfection in and of itself can be beautiful. Something done not to perfection it can be amazing. The photographers and the fashion magazines and all that stuff, you've seen it before, where they say beauty is subjective. And some building, someone I may see and I think it's beautiful, somebody else takes a look at it and goes, it's not to my taste. AI doesn't have taste. FK, it doesn't think beyond what it's been told to think. And what it's been told to think is based on whatever data set it was provided in the beginning. For some, an industrial warehouse district that's been converted into lofts as an apartment home, that's a beautiful thing. For others, including myself, I prefer a log cabin in the mountains. I think that's beautiful. Get me away from the industrial aspect. And you know what? It's okay, because I know that what I enjoy is completely different from what somebody else would enjoy. And let's discuss our differences. With FK, there's no discussion on differences. It has an output. You change the input one way, and all of a sudden, that industrial district that was so cherished and loved before, one little instinct, you know what? That's not even considered anymore. And now we're considering the beachfront property. What I'm getting at is, where humans are concerned, variables happen. We accept that they happen. Even that brand new apartment community that's going up, that new lease up that was just built, the ribbons have been cut, and you're moving that first resident in to their apartment. It's not perfect. And yet, I got to think back. The apartment that my wife and I lived in, the very first one when we moved away from our parents, there are parts of that apartment that I remember, and it wasn't the perfect parts. What I remember was a little ding on the wall that happened when I went to pick up the pot at dinner one night, and I didn't grab it by the pot holder. I grabbed the hot handle and got surprised. By the time the pain reached me, it startled me, and I ended up throwing the pot against the wall. The imperfection there, that's what I remember. Beauty is subjective. It's not that way for artificial intelligence. Life is messy. We live in a human world. Residents will be upset. We will make our leaders upset. Our leaders will make us upset. You know what? It's life. There will always be disagreements. The best part of those disagreements is the conversation that happens to where maybe at the end, the two parties that are upset with each other will no longer be upset with each other. They don't even have to agree. They just accept the fact that the other person has a difference of opinion. That's a messy thing. FK only has discussions internally, and those discussions are justified by a mathematical algorithm that, even if that mathematical algorithm says that 1 + 1 is no longer 2, the AI that's in place doesn't even think that it's right or wrong. There's not an ethic of good versus bad, right versus wrong within that AI. Because the AI is not messy. The AI is exactly what it was programmed to do. The FK, heck, in that world, perfection is easy. Messy is hard. For us as human beings, messy is easy because we're messy to begin with. And you know what? It's in embracing that is the one thing that AI can't do. It's that embracing part. One last thought that's a little bit related that I do want to leave with you. I saw an interview here lately with Gregory Hinton, who is referred to as the Godfather of AI. He worked for Google when they were developing their original artificial intelligence structure. And he took it, and in this interview, he went into some depth on how he made the linkages and the connections, the mathematical formulas to do what you and I now consider to be all of the named platform, and even all of the stuff that is not Google related. It was at the time, if I understand right, it was open source. And a lot of every type of artificial intelligence platform, it's my understanding, is built based upon his original design, which is based on the way that our brain makes connections on the inside. But it's still a mathematical formula. Well, he was asked as a part of this interview, what do you tell your kids about career advice for the future? Because now, if you go listen to anything, and the guy's name again is Geoffrey Hinton. And Geoffrey Hinton, he gives interviews now about the cautions of artificial intelligence. I found it to be very balanced on what good it can do, but the cautions that are. And he was asked very specifically, very pointedly, what do you tell your kids and grandkids about career advice? And he laughed. And in the interview, I said, he laughed and he says, I have become successful enough that in reality, my kids and my grandkids don't ever have to work. And the host and he shared a laugh. And then he said, okay, but if they did, what would you tell them? And his answer to me is very revealing. He says, I would tell them to go become a plumber. Do something that requires work with your hands. Friends, AI is coming, for good, for bad, for challenging, for the blessings. I completely and steadfastly believe that FK, artificial intelligence, will be a life-changing thing. And we don't even know what changes from complicated to complex is going to look like. I accept it's going to happen. I am also very cautious about it. And I am happy that I have some of the skills of a plumber because what Mr. Geoffrey Hinton says, I believe to be true. I think the trades, not just plumbing, but even carpentry, just like Mr. Mark, I think one of the reasons why that is the career path that has the greatest amount of opportunity is that you can't not have people who can manipulate things in physical space to embrace imperfection, turn it in to what some people will call beauty, in a way that makes lives better. You have to have that human touch. I firmly believe that. Thank you for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week, and I'll see you somewhere.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Maintenance Mindset. I hope you take away ideas that apply to your current and future career goals. Please check out Maintenance Mindset Minute to hear short-form, high-impact, applicable, maintenance-centered information. Whatever you do today, do it with a maintenance mindset. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. Visit multifamilymedianetwork.com to learn more about our other industry podcasts, thought pieces, and sponsorship opportunities. I'll see you somewhere.